Okay. Good morning to everybody. Boker Tov, as several of you said. I think that some of you have heard me before, so some of it will be a repetition. Something may have different stresses this time. This is a short presentation of Taharat Hamishpacha. It will only be like presenting the headlines. Last time in the shiur with the Rav Natan, he told about somebody who wanted to convert that came to Hillel, one of the sages, and asked him to say in one sentence while he's standing on one foot to tell what is Judaism. And he said, don't do to others that you hate. Don't, I think that's, I don't know how to say it in English. Don't, and then he said, go home, and the rest are details. The rest are interpretations. Go home and learn them. So we'll say the same for this presentation, that it's only main lines. And in order to live accordingly to the rulings, to the frame, you have to learn a lot of the details, because there are many. So that is like for the introduction. The other thing I just wanted to say, and we will not go into it, but just to give you this impression that I feel that from the beginning, the Torah was very conscious to show the people how much marriage and procreation, making a family, is important in the spirit of the Torah. Just in the two first chapters, we have several verses about it, about how God created man and woman, and the man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they should be fruitful and multiply. So this is already giving the atmosphere of how Torah sees the importance of marriage and making a family. And I think that is some of the basis of also for the Taharat Mishpacha, because it is regulating this marriage, the sexual part of the marital relations. So Taharat Mishpacha, it's one of the most basic pillars in Jewish life, and it's consisting of a lot of halachic regulation around the marital sexual life. Some will feel, especially people from the Western countries, modern people, enlightened people from the Western countries, that this is a bit not comfortable, that the Torah sort of goes into your bedroom and makes all different kind of rulings there. But for the Torah, this is a mitzvah like every other mitzvah. And every mitzvah in the Torah has explanations how to do it. It's taken totally natural, because sexual life in a marriage is natural, and so are the approach of the Torah to it. It's our problem as being these enlightened academic persons that it feels a bit inconvenient. And you will see that it's even more, I think it's more with the Ashkenazic Jews. The Sephardi Jews put Taharat Mishpacha much higher in their preparations, if they are choosing which mitzvah to keep. Like very often the the good Scandinavian Jew will keep kosher and keep Shabbat, more Shabbat, less Shabbat, make a lot of Hanukkah, but will not even consider to keep these rules about Taharat Mishpacha, because it feels like a little not fitting within this academic setting. I think it's not right. I think it's just, the Torah just relates to it as a very natural thing. In a good marriage, you have sexual relations, but they have, according to the Torah, there are certain mitzvot that just regulate it in a certain way. It is so important from the Jewish point of view that in a community, you build a mikveh before you make a synagogue or many other things. The mikveh is such a basic thing in a Jewish life. So that has precedence. And you can even sell a synagogue in order to build a mikveh. You should think maybe the synagogue is more holy, but the mikveh is the most important because it's preserving and making possible to have Jewish life and making a family. It's a very high consideration in the Jewish life. We are not going to go into all the philosophical ideas around Taharat Mishpacha. What is it good? Is it not good? How can it help us? What are the philosophical ideas about it? We will not go into these things. Today we will keep more to the halachic line. So Taharat Mishpacha is to keep it or to transgress it is a very severe prohibition from the point of view of the Torah. And there is a grave punishment, very grave punishment. And we find that in a verse in Leviticus in Vayikra, and it says, a man who lies with a menstruation woman and he uncovered her nakedness, he has probed her source, and she has exposed the source of her blood. Both of them shall be excised from the midst of the Jewish of their people.
Just a moment. Do everyone see the text now?
Just the title page.
Yes,
Yeah, so we just see that you have to go down in your own so we can see the text. We just see the Taharat Mishpacha first side.
I don't know how to go down because I see the whole screen.
In the left side, you go down in your computer?
No, I don't go down. I put up like a presentation where I'm just.
Yeah, so we don't see it. We don't see it.
So I have to go out and go down.
Yeah, go out and go down.
So then I will keep it like this?
Yes, that's best. That's
Yes,
best, I
right.
think.
Okay. So we should just read that. I think that that verse, that pasuk once more. A man who lies with a menstruation woman and he uncovered her nakedness, he has probed her source, and she has exposed the source of her blood. Both of them shall be excised from the midst of their people. Now, this is the punishment. Being excised from the midst of your people is a punishment called karet. It's considered a very grave punishment. It's a spiritual punishment. You're not really excised physically from your people, but somehow you will be distant from your people, not be part of. I don't understand totally that punishment, but it's called karet, and it's the same. We have the same punishment for not keeping Yom Kippur, and that will everybody will know. Well, that is serious. So, from the Torah point of view, this mitzvah has the same kind of weight. It has the same punishment as for not keeping a Yom Kippur. So the sages were very anxious and very busy putting up guidelines in a way that people would not come to transgress this mitzvah, because they understood that I don't know. That they understood that the sexual drive and desire in people is a very strong drive, and it's easy to fail it, to get past the line of what you can do. So they put, I'm sure you have learned about it, fences around the main mitzvah in order that you should not come into the mitzvah itself to transgress that. So there are a lot of guidelines how to behave in this period when the woman has her menstruation. If you have any questions on the way of something is not clear, you are welcome to ask. I will not wait till the end and then maybe something is, the line of understanding will be broken. So please, you can ask questions along the way. I want to just introduce some concepts. Purity and impurity, because that's the context that the laws of Taharat Mishpacha are introduced. They are written in the book of Leviticus, which has all the rules about impurity and in order to approach, especially in order to approach the temple, when you can be part of the temple service. So I will give you only a hint of why should that be in the same context. And I think we know the temple was as a sanctity. So this way we get a hint that the Torah is also looking at the marriage as a sanctity. And we have to do certain things to keep it a sanctity, to keep it sanctified, and thereby have God presence in our marriage. It's just a hint. It's a longer philosophical thought, but I thought for you maybe you would like to think about it in that sense. I think it's quite intriguing. So pure is in Hebrew called tahor, and that's a status that allows a person to come to the temple and partake and eat consecrated food and other things going on in the temple. And it's also a status that allows a person to have marital sexual relations, physical, I will say, because it's not only the sexual relation in the end, it's a whole physical. You abstain from all physical relations. Tameh is a status that prohibits the entrance to the temple and participating in the temple service, and also prohibits marital physical relations. It's not related to hygiene. It's not stigmatized. And you're not inferior because you are impure. It's a status towards the temple or towards your wife. And there are even mitzvot that are so important that it's a mitzvah to become tameh in order to keep it. Like, for instance, cleaning a dead body before burial. When you touch a dead body, you become impure. And but the mitzvah of taking care of the body before burial is so important that it's a mitzvah to become tameh for it. So don't relate to it as something inferior. It's a status, but nothing to do with inferior or a superior or something like that. You will hear the word nidah many times. And that's the status of a woman during the period of her menstruation. And we will talk about purification, about tahara. So we have different kinds of tum'ah, of being tameh. There are different kinds, and there are different ways how to get obtain purity from that tum'ah. In Taharat Mishpacha, we will only concentrate on what we are doing in Taharat Mishpacha. This process begins from the time when the bleeding of the menstruation woman has ceased, and it will end by the time when she has immersed in a mikveh. So that's the way, the process of purification in Taharat Mishpacha. Okay, now we will get to the matter itself. Now, this was a little introduction. So, when is a woman becoming nida? The scripture says in Vayikra, and a woman, if she has a discharge, her discharge spring from her flesh being blood, 7 days she shall be in her menstrual state. Anyone who touches her shall be impure until the evening. So we learn here that a woman becomes nida when blood is being discharged from her uterus. That's how the sages explained it, from the uterus, which is including the cervix of the uterus. And from the Torah point of view, this is accompanied by a physical sensation. This they understand when it says her discharge from her flesh. When it says from her flesh, they figure that it's some kind of a physical feeling too. Okay, so she sees blood, she finds blood. Its blood is coming out of her, and she's also having some kind of a physical sensation. That is the definition from the Torah. It doesn't matter if she's bleeding 1 day or 7 days. From the Torah point of view, always the nida period is 7 days. And then she can begin do the purification process. This relates only to a regular menstruation. And from the moment she sees blood, there no physical contact is allowed during this period. Now, so this is one kind of blood, one kind of discharge. We have another kind of discharge, and that's called zava. And it's also, we have that also in another verse in Vayikra, and it says, and a woman, if her discharge of blood shall flow many days, not at the time of her menstruation, or if it shall flow beyond her menstruation, for all the days of the discharge of her impurity, she shall be like during the days of her menstruation. She is impure. So, Sava is considered an irregular bleeding, and it can take place only in the following 11 days after her nida period. That will be, she either continues her nida period with bleeding on the 8th day, but on the 8th day, it will already be considered zava. Or she can stop the bleeding of her nida after the 7 days. She is pure according to the Torah, and after 2 days, she has another bleeding, and that will also be considered zava. This can happen up till 11 days after she is nida. It's only in this time span that zahav is implied in Torah. After the 11 days, the Torah considers any bleeding as a new nida period. But Sava has a different things and introduces us a new rule. And so that you have probably heard about, that's the counting of 7 clean days. And we learned this from sorry, I have to roll down a little bit. The ruling comes from this verse in the Torah. But if she was cleansed from her discharge, she shall count for herself 7 days, and then she shall be pure. So here we learn that after somebody has had discharge in the 11 days following the Torah, she has to add another 7-day clean days in order to become pure. Now, this is, in summary, it goes like this. We have 2 types of discharge. We have Nida and Zava. And we have 3 rules of Nida. The one, Nida, we have 3 rules we go by. The one is that Nida is the 7 days. And then we have something called Zava Ktana and Zava Gdola. They are both covered in the verse that we read before. I just didn't go into what are the rules for each of them because it's not so relevant for today. But it is a very complicated regime, and it needs an easy access to rabbinical authority for guidance and halachic decisions. And it also needs a woman to understand the different types of discharge and working with these rules, which is rather complicated. I can try to give you an example, and I hope this will not confuse you. But let's say a woman thinks she is Nida, she has some kind of discharge, and it happens so that it's not from her uterus. If it's not from her uterus, it's actually not considered Nida, but she thinks so. So she will begin counting. And after 3 days, that this discharge stops, and there is another day, and then suddenly she has a discharge again. And this time it is, yes, from the uterus. This is her Nida period beginning. But she began counting already at the discharge that was not actually a Nida discharge. So she thinks she can count only 7 days from that discharge, but it's not true. She should count 7 days from when the Nida discharge begin in the middle, like on the 4th day or something like this. And then she should count the 7 days, which means that if she begins counting with the discharge that was not from the uterus, then actually she will count 7 days and she will transgress the prohibition, because she is actually Nida 5 more or 4 days more after she stopped counting the 7 clean days. Was this an example that was possible to understand? Nobody is saying anything. It's a bit complicated.
Many people are doing yes with their head.
Okay, I don't see many. I see only 4. So I don't see many. But it's just to try and give an illustration how complicated and how alert and understanding a woman should be in order to follow these regulations. So the rabbis were a bit nervous, and that these different regimes should be mixed up, and then it would cause a couple to transgress a very serious prohibition.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you know when the bleeding is not from the menstruation? It's not coming from uterus.
Yes, that's what is very difficult. Now, this is what I said. One of the signs would be that when it's explained in the I can go back here. When it's explained in the Nida, it is both a discharge of blood and a physical feeling going together. So you have these 2 components in order to make a woman Nida. So usually a discharge which is not coming from the uterus would be assumed that it is not, it doesn't have a physical addition, or it is not accompanied by a physical sensation. And she was not enough alert to make that differentiation. She saw only discharge, and she didn't feel any a physical sensation, but she began counting anyway. So she didn't know how to differentiate between the two. This is just an example, because when you are in doubt, you have to ask the rabbi.
Okay, toda.
Yeah, that is the very simple answer, but I'm just trying to illustrate for you how it could be confused. And it could be that because we didn't have the law codex that we have today, that women knew it in a different way. That I cannot say. It could be that they had much more sensitivity according to the bodily reactions around bloody discharges. And we are not, because we go to according another regime that has been, we will see that now. So we don't have to pay any notice to these differences anymore. But at that point, it was very important. And I think the rabbis wanted to help, and they were really concerned that couples might end up transgressing a prohibition that they didn't intend to do. So that's why Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he found this need to make a uniform set of rules, make some kind of a regime. And he made the first regime. When I will not go into this regime, but I will go into the one that is more relevant for today's, for the contemporary regime. It was like 3 generations after Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rabbi Zira introduced a stringency, a chumrah, to make a regime that is applicable to all categories of blood types, with the rules from the Zava Gdola. He combined all of it, so you would not transgress any of the rules if you followed that regime. You would follow both Nida and the types of Zava. They would all be followed if you had that regime. And he based it, he introduced the 7 clean days to be applied also for women, for a woman who is a Nida. That what we saw is not in the biblical verse. And he states that daughters of Israel took upon themselves to be stringent. Even at the sight of a drop of blood, the size of a mustard seed, they would count 7 clean days. So they would be stringent, they would count these 7 clean days also where it was not necessary. So that had apparently become a rule that the women began practicing. And he said, this is what he sees that is going on. So then let's make a regime that takes it into account, and everybody will follow the same rule. And that's how, and he made the basics of our temporary regime, where every woman follows the same procedure in every event of a uterine bleeding. It doesn't matter if it's Nida, if it's Zava, if it's a spot, if it's whenever it is a uterine bleeding, then we follow this regime. And it was not meant to make life harder for us or as a supplement. This is meant, it's a building a regime that will prevent any possible violation of the prohibition because of the possible confusion women could do. And especially at this time, the Jewish people were dispersed. They were in exile. So it was not everywhere. They had a very local rabbinical authority that you could just go and ask. So that was another reason for making a regime that everybody would know, and it would be the same, and it would cover all the possibilities. So how does this look now? The contemporary practice. it says that there is a minimum of 4 days of bleeding. This is the Sephardic practice. And for the Ashkenazi, it's 5 days of bleeding. It doesn't mean that it's only 4 or 5 days. That is the minimum days. It can be 7 days. It depends how long time a woman's period is going on. If she has a period of 7 days, then she can only continue in the process when she finishes her bleeding. So when the bleeding is finished or ceased, she is going to the next step, which is called a Hefsek Tahara, and I guess called the purity examination. And we will talk about that. And when she has done that and it's okay, she can go to begin counting the 7 clean days. And when they finish, she can go on to the mikveh. So these are the 3 steps to regain the status of Tahara. Clear? Okay. So now we go in a little into more to the practice today. What are we actually doing? Okay. But only in big lines. I will read this midrash to you because I think it's very known, and it's telling exactly what we have what we're going into, and it's called the hedge of roses. It is the way of the world that a man marries a woman. When he approaches her, she tells him, "I have seen a stain like a red rose." And immediately he distances himself. Who caused him not to come close to her? What iron wall stands between them? What snake has bitten him? What scorpion has stung him, such that he does not become close to her? It's none other than the words of the Torah, which are soft as roses, and which nevertheless form a hedge around him. And I would even add here that roses have thorns. So you don't want to go into that. You don't want to approach too much because you will get scratched. It is, and we learn also from the Torah of the physical separation. So we know that the physical separation begins the moment the woman is coming nida. And now I'm saying nida as a general rule, not differentiating between zava and other or spots or anything. I would just call it nida as one over, I don't know, we'll call that umbrella. And to a woman in her state of menstrual purity, you shall not approach to uncover her nakedness. Now, this is actually the first mitzvah here we have that is a lo ta'aseh, a negative command. All the other things we read was actually what you should do. You should count 7 days. You should do like this. You should do like that. Right? But here it says you shall not approach. So it's actually the first time we really have a negative mitzvah. I'm sure you learned about positive and negative mitzvot. So how is it understood from the biblical approach? So Ramban explains it. One who has intercourse with a woman who is prohibited to him, or embraces or kisses her in a manner expressing physical desire or derives physical pleasure from that contact, is punished by lashes according to the Torah. Like, this is harsh punishment. This is how Ramban explains this verse. So, and we have said that already, from the first sight of blood till the woman has been in the mikveh, this couple is prohibited to having physical contact. Now, this is not an easy thing at all. There are so many situations. It can be up to, I don't know, 14 days a month where you don't have any physical contact. And we use very often physical contact to express other kinds of emotions. It's not only a matter of sexual relations. We want to comfort somebody, you hug them. You want to give encouragement, so you clap them on the shoulder, or all different kind of things. And it's very difficult. It is. And that's why the sages, they expand this prohibition to all different more kinds of physical contacts than the ones that Rambam described. And it's in order to help us not get to that point where we are transgressing these, whether we are doing these things. So some examples for the expansion of the prohibitions is that you have separate beds. You have 2 beds, so you can separate them some in that period. You are careful when you have to hand things to one another. You place a thing on the table, and the other spouse will take it from the table, for example. You avoid talking lightheadedness, like making jokes or a bit things that could be perceived as an introduction or some kind of encouraging physical or sexual desire. And you should abstain also from all different kind of other activities that could be misunderstood by your partner. Okay, so no, don't undress in front of him or things like that. These are just some examples. Now, we have come to the point where the blood has ceased, the discharge has ceased, and we need to go into the first part, the first stage of the purity, which is called Hefsek Taharat. A conclusion in purity, I said before, it's difficult to translate it correctly. But Hefsek Taharat is an examination, and it finishes the first stage of the Nida period, the time when you are Nida, when you have some kind of blood flow. It's like a transition that gets you into the next stage that could begin, and that is counting the 7 clean days. So this examination determines that the bleeding has completely stopped. It's not enough that you just look in your underwear and you see no blood, or when you clean yourself at the toilet, it's not enough. You need to make this examination. It can be performed whenever the bleeding has stopped. Like if you bleed 3 days, you can make it only 3 days, even though you can make you can begin counting the 7 clean days from the 5 days or 4 days, from the amount of minimum days. You can make this examination before, but it's preferable to do it before sunset, towards the evening, when you begin counting the 7 days. And then you also have some kind of order, because then it comes out that the day you made the Hefsek Taharat, towards that evening will be the same evening. If it's like, say, it's you do this towards evening on Wednesday, then Wednesday will be the day for your immersion. So it's easy. If you do it, you don't interfere it with other days of making a Hefsek Taharat. It's just, it helps you to remember also for the counting. It's an internal examination of the vagina, and you're using a testing cloth, which is ticked, after which you have to check it very carefully that on the cloth there are no signs of blood. If you are in doubt that's blood or not blood, you will have to ask a rabbi. If it's but if you can see it's clean, then you can begin counting the 7 clean days. Okay, so now we're into the next stage, the 7 clean days, and it's 7 succeeding days without any sign of blood. Okay, you don't have to, there is no obligation to count or say out loud, this is the first day of the 7 clean days. This is the second day of that is not necessary. But what you have to do is that you should examine yourself every day in the morning and before sunset to be conscious, to look consciously for traces of bleeding. It could be that you forgot one day to do or something. So there is rabbinical discussions about the minimum number of examinations required. And the minimum requirement is to do it on the first day and on the 7th day. But that's not what you should plan from the beginning. You should plan that you do it every day. So if you see any kind of a sign, then you have to wait again towards sunset. You make a new Hifzik Tara and you begin counting over from day 1. If you see that a sign in those 7 days. If you are doubt if it's blood, you ask the rabbi. And it's not a problem asking the rabbi. The rabbi is used to this. He's an expert, not everybody rabbi, but there are rabbis that are experts, and they will know to differentiate between uterine blood and non-uterine blood. And this is what is important here, right? So, but don't stop the counting, don't stop your examinations, because the answer will come back. And maybe said, there's no problem, you can just continue. So if you have stopped this, you might have missed some days. Maybe you will have to begin over again 7 days, and you don't want to miss these days. You want to continue to come to the mikveh as early as possible. After darkness, by the end of the 7 clean days, then it's time when you can go into the mikveh. Okay? And we didn't talk about what a mikveh is, and we'll not talk a lot about it, but it's a pool of natural water. Natural water is, we call mayim chayim. And of course, you can feel here that it's also it's a whole battery of philosophical thoughts about why is it mayim chayim? Why is it called living water?
If there are questions, is it now or in the end? Because people raise their hands.
You can ask now.
So
I don't see. Yeah, I see now. Florian. Florian, Ein?
So we have Gisa and then Florian and then Rebecca.
It's okay. Who was first? For me, I can wait. It's okay. Was Florian first?
No, you can go. You go.
Okay, okay. Did I understand it right? I'm supposed to ask a rabbi and not a rebbetzin, right?
You can ask. There are people that go to the Rabbanit, and there are also women learning this, but usually it is a decision of the rabbi. But many women do not feel comfortable going to a rabbi. So they will go to a Rabbanit, and maybe she will pass it on, because usually you will go with this cloth you have with the spot on it, and the rabbi will have to see and decide. But a way of asking a rabbi can also be to put this cloth in an envelope, close it, put your telephone number without a name outside, and put it in his post box or under wherever you're supposed to put it. And then you don't have the personal relationship with the rabbi if you feel that is difficult. And some go through the Rabbanit. That is true too.
I could maybe add, Ima, like, we have to distinguish between someone who lives in Jerusalem, and there are some expert rabbis that it's normal to send it to. And when we are in a small community, when everyone knows a rabbi, then it will be much less natural to go to the rabbi, because then it becomes a improper
the rabbi will know who you
conversation and so on. And then you go either to the Rabbanit, and she knows how to do, or there are other ways in communities how to go. But
she can also ask her husband without saying who it is.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not a problem.
Exactly. But the principle is to go to someone who's expert that knows what a red color isn't, and that is something that people learn by experience. So also most rabbis will maybe not know how to know that. Only rabbis who have followed another rabbi or another expert who has showed them in not 5, but in maybe 500 different occasions, and then have the ability to separate. But the question was, the question was understood.
It's an expertise. Not every rabbi can do it. That is so. I know we have little time, but I just want to tell you, I'm a I was and I'm a occupational therapist, and I worked in hand therapy. And suddenly I got a patient that came, and he had a nerve problem. He had damage to his nerves, and he couldn't use the right hand. And he told it was a big problem because he was such an expert, and he had a special little magnifying glass that he is using to check these cloths. And because he couldn't use 2 hands, he couldn't check it properly. So he was very eager to be, I was so impressed. I didn't think about it. How much important is you keep the cloth one hand, and it's a magnifying glass where you check the blood very carefully. It's really an expertise. He told me a lot about it. We had some fun about it. So, okay, but the mikveh, nowadays, usually the mikveh is in a building, and it's built according all the rules. It should
We had 2 more questions.
Oh, sorry.
To have them now.
Yeah, let's have them now.
Yes, so my question is, what if the days finish on Shabbat? If the 7 days finish on Shabbat?
You can go to mikveh in the Shabbat, on Shabbat.
Okay.
It's considered such an important mitzvah that you can go, which is quite exceptional, that you can go to the mikveh on Shabbat, because you're actually you're not allowed all different kinds of things with washing and immersing in with water all over your body on Shabbat, but you're allowed to go to the mikveh.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and then we have Rebecca.
I was just wondering, you're saying that there are rabbis who are experts, but does it say anywhere what's considered like blood from the cervix and what is not considered blood of the cervix? Like, for instance, obviously during a woman's menstrual cycle, or even like in periods of bleeding, the blood can be different. Like it could be fresh blood, which is like bright red. Sometimes it could be brown. Yeah. So is it like some kind of definition, or?
There are definitions, and we have not gone into them, but there are 5 types of blood, which are defined by different kind of color shades that they cannot have. Then it's considered impure blood. Arriving, coming from the uterus. Okay, but I thought that would go into too much detail. That is a little more for when you really want to learn the details of how to live with these rules. So a mikveh nowadays is a very nice place.
Sorry, there was a last question again now. We have
Esther.
Yes, very short question. How about cooking for a husband and the family during the period of Nida?
You can cook for him. But it would be nice if he cooked for you. But you can cook for him. There are some sets of rules, and I on purpose didn't go into it, that how you serve it. Can you serve it for him? Can you do that? Is that considered an affectionate activity, that if you serve him his food, he will consider it more like that you want to spoil him, and you want to warm him up for later activity. So these goes to the rules that we're not talking about today, but you can cook. But the more about what the rabbis talk more about is if you can serve it and how you serve it for him.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go to the mikveh very fast.
Sorry, there is another question. They're coming.
Oh, they're coming again. Okay, come again.
Yeah, sorry, but it was just more about like the serving part. It's correct that like if I'm serving my husband, let's say the bread or a glass of wine, like he cannot take it like from my hand. I have to place it on the table, and then he has to take it.
That is what is recommended. Yes, but there are certain things that may be difficult to just put on the table, because it could be a child that you want to give him the child. So sometimes not everything can be just put on the table and the other one will take it. So you have to be careful, things that you are handing directly, if you don't have a child to hand it through a sibling or something that is big enough to handle it. But yes, most things should just be placed on the table and the spouse will take it. And the other way around, the husband puts on the table and the woman takes it. It's not only she, it's also what he is doing. Okay?
Thank you.
Towards her, towards him. So now nowadays we have these nice mikvaot, which is a nice building, and it has nice rooms for preparations, and it has already this water in according to all the rules. You may also go to a lake or to the sea. It's also considered Maim Chamim and Maim Chaim. And there is the minimum amount that has to be in order for you to be able to immerse. But it's less private, and it's a little excitement. So usually women just go to the mikveh, but it could be in a situation nowadays, people travel a lot of places, and you could be a place where there is no mikveh, and then you can actually find a natural source, a pool of living water like a lake or something like that to go into. Okay, we're getting to the end. I'm telling you, we are getting to the end. So now we've come some far. We have the mikveh, now we have to go into it. And what does it say? It says, we have, again for that, some rules around it, and as usual, we get it from the Torah. And you can see all the verses that I quoted today, they all come from Vayikra. From Leviticus, which deals with these things. And a man, and here we are learning something from a man. When semen is emitted from him, shall bathe all his flesh in water, and he is impure until the evening. So it says here a man, but it's telling something about how to bathe all his flesh in the water. And this is applying to the woman too. So from this, two requirements for proper immersion were learned from our sages told us. The one requirement for a kosher, a proper immersion, is that the entire body has to be immersed in the water at the same time, totally covered. You don't take parts in, but you go under the water and everything is covered at one time. And the second requirement is that nothing can adhere to your body. That makes a barrier. We call it that, halachically, it's called a chatzitza. There should be nothing between the water and your body. So I will just give you an example what can be a barrier. It can be an earring, for example, or it can be some meat stuck in between your teeth. That would create a barrier. So you have to remove these things before you can go into the mikveh. So in order to fulfill these two requirements, also for this, there are rules, basic rules of what we are doing. So the Torah stated that a woman has to examine the entire body. She has to look herself over the body. She's looking down on her body, and she cannot look at everything behind her. So she can take a mirror and look to a mirror in the back, or she can ask, if she has a doubt, she can ask the woman in the mikveh to look at her back to see if there's anything, if it's some hair sticking to her back or whatever. And this woman in the mikveh is there in order to see. It's not in order to be a policewoman. It's in order to see that when the immersion is going on, that all of the body is immersed at one time. So no hair is sticking out. Okay, because longer hair can go to the surface. So her job is not to be a policewoman and make some interrogation about you and what you are doing. It's only to observe that the whole of your body has been under the water at one time. Okay. That comes from the iyun, that we are checking. The woman has to look over her body to see that nothing will interfere between her and her body. She might see she has a plaster or something, right? Ezra the scribe made a requirement of washing and combing all the hair of the body, that there should be no knots in the hair. Our sages added cleaning internal areas, Beit HaMinisterim. It means cleaning the mouth. It's an open area, internal area, but it opens out. So you clean the mouth, you clean the teeth, you clean in between your teeth. And that's just an example, right? But other internal areas are your ears. It could be around your, what is that called? Navel? I don't know what it's called. Taboo. There are certain areas like that. And also they said you should wash your whole body. So woman washes the whole body. And what I would like to say, I know I'm about after time, is that this is the time, this is her mitzvah. This is her time. Enjoy it. Take your time. Relax. Enjoy all the preparations. Have a good bath. And let the husband take care of the children. And you take the time you need in order for you to make this a special mitzvah and get you into the mood for the mitzvah, into the spiritual mood for it. I think that is very important. This is her mitzvah. She should be at peace. She should have the time. She should not be stressed to both prepare her and going into the immersion. So now she has prepared everything. She's looked through everything. And these are many details that has to be learned too. But she has done them and she's ready to go into the mikveh. She's ready. She's going in and she's immersing herself into the mikveh. And it was proper. It was kosher. There are sometimes people make more immersions, less immersions. There are different customs about it. And you say the bracha, which somehow also put holiness into this mitzvah. It makes it not only physical, but also spiritual. And here she is. She's pure. She can go home and they can take up again their physical marital relations. I want to say from a personal experience only that you can make the best shower you want and have a long bath and clean yourself thoroughly. It will never be the same feeling as coming from the mikveh. There is such an additional dimension of spirituality that you can never get in a regular bathtub. I'm just saying for you. And then I have to give the last, this last picture. Flowers. What has that to do with anything? Well, like this. My husband learned from his rabbi when he was in the yeshiva and they were studying these laws, because also men have to know these laws, not only women. He learned that his rabbi told that he himself, whenever his wife was immersing, the night of the immersing, he would come home with flowers to her. And one day he met a neighbor in the hallway, and that neighbor also had flowers in the hand. And they looked at each other and they smiled, and both of them knew, and they went home, each to his home. And from that time on, it was from the very beginning on in our marriage, so he learned it before, I got flowers at the day when I came home from mikveh. And that was very, very nice. That was something we had between us. So it doesn't have to be flowers. You don't have to go home and say, you have to bring flowers that day. But I think it's important that a couple has their special thing for that night. I will just recommend it. And I'm not getting so many flowers anymore because I'm not Nida anymore. So I will have to just really be happy with the flowers for Shabbat. And I am. That's it. I'm sorry I took some more minutes, but we took the questions.
Thank you. There's for sure many more questions. But as you said in the start, the main idea here was to go through the main objects. There are so many details to learn about what Nida Ziva is, about how to count, about what the 7 days of stopping is, what is a proper mikveh, how we should use it, how should people behave, men and women, in the time of physical separation, and what is the good things about these periods, and all the details. The idea of the shiur was to go through the main things, and that everyone would, in their own time and interest, go into the details. You could find, of course, some of it in the sages book, or there are many very good books. For example, Ish V'Isha, as my mother shows here.
Can you see it?
Um,
This is a very, very, very good book.
the marriage
I recommend
covenant.
it very, very
In
much.
Hebrew, it's Ish V'Isha by Rabbi Knoll,
Knoll.
isn't that?
Yeah, but in English it's called the Marriage Covenant.
Yeah, so that's
It's a very good book. It's one of the best ones I have come across.
so it's a start. Thank you so much, Ima, for this. It was, my mother is very goes into details with all of these things in one shiur. That was a big challenge for her, because she wants to do everything very proper. But that was the order from Rav Moshe David, so you did it very nice. Thank you, and see you next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.